Well, good evening. Given that's the other day, then we have our special guest Chad here. What's going on, guys?
Hey, Dave. Hey, Chad. Good to have you back, sir.
Hello, how are you?
Hey.
So, shall we go around the horn and see what we're all smoking tonight? I am having the last, until April, the last of my Casa Fuente Maduros. It's actually better. I'm getting a lot of pecan, a little bit of graham cracker, some coffee, some nice
Really?
notes
There's no tobacco in there?
on the retro hail.
I see. Are you going to tell my story later on?
No, I'll let you tell. I'll let you tell. I'll let you say what you were doing about retro hell, and then it'll be followed by.
Well, okay. I'm finishing up a cheroot, and then I'm going to light up a black swan from Oliva.
Oh, that'll be a nice change from the tumbleweed thistle Clint Eastwood picking it off the dirt.
Chad missed all this in our pre-show. We were talking about cigars, and I was mentioning there's a cigar that I really loved, but then I smoked a couple of them, within a few days, and then it became like, nah, and I got to take a break to get back into why I loved it so much. And Dave goes, well, you got to learn to retrohale, right? That's where because you blow it through your nose and you get all these.
Would you like a demonstration? Would you like a retrohale?
You go ahead while I'm talking, but you get a lot more flavor, and I know that for sure when I've tried it, but I've been unsuccessful because it burns, and I don't have the technique down. But he said, go give it a try. So I did it. He didn't know what I was smoking, and I did it, and I got weeds and hay and like tar, and I told him what I'm smoking, which is a pretty low end cigar to start off with. Yeah, that's why it was an unpleasant experience, and I'm still feeling the after effects of that. So, wait, Chad, what do you got?
Today I am smoking a Southern Draw Rose of Sharon.
Oh,
the Perfecto size. I think you actually sent this to me, Nurse Dave. So
the Rose of Sharon is a banger. It's a good cigar.
Yeah, it's an excellent cigar. So,
which I'm surprised, Dave, that's not your staple, given somebody close to you.
Well, I just haven't purchased any more yet. More than PB is here, and Tig Lily and Steven. Welcome, Dad. How are you? And I was going to be really, really excited and say, hey, did you look at our subscriber count? Our subscriber count's up to 94.
Is it?
Yes, and then we had three, and then we have 3 people that showed up for the show.
3, yeah. Hey,
well, there'll be more. You know what it is?
I was gonna say my wife's right in there, and she hasn't joined you. That's how you doing?
You realize that the only reason Tig Lily is here because she's waiting for your wife to get here.
Yeah.
And just a reminder, next week, everybody, will still be at 6 p.m. Pacific, but I get to actually start an hour earlier because California joins us, and then Chad goes forward.
The other 49 states, join you.
Yeah. No, just one. Just one. Just one.
Not Oregon, not Washington.
Well, yeah, but
yeah. You know what? And what I'm drinking is in honor of our guest tonight. I got Stranahan single barrel straight from the Rocky Mountains in Denver, Colorado, which,
considering he lives in Utah, yeah, that's a tribute.
Well, no, he sent me a bunch of samples of stuff, and
yeah. Is it the blue label or is it the
single barrel yellow label?
Okay.
Oh, that's a good one.
But I think I like the blue one better, actually.
I really like the blue. I really like the blue. It's really
Chad, what are you drinking before I tell everybody and ruin everything for everybody?
For Lent this year,
that's right.
Drinking, so I am having Topo Chico.
Good stuff.
Nice, just mineral water. It's my favorite one. The bubbles are bigger. I don't know how they do it, but the bubbles are bigger.
And
if you ask Rich, I'm sure he'll do a demonstration in the bathtub to see if we can get bigger bubbles.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing that.
And I'm also this is the excuse I can use. I'm on Lent too, so I'm drinking coffee.
Yeah. Chad, you're smoking, so that means you're outside. So that means
I'm
you're.
in my garage.
Oh, okay.
I need to have a jacket on. The garage says it's 64, so
Oh, that's not bad.
it's. But we had a pretty good snowstorm that blew through the last couple of days. The one that hit the Sierras, it finally moved its way up here, and we got hit with a lot of snow. But it's starting to warm up, so it's starting to melt. So that's the nice thing about March in Utah is usually when it snows, you give it a day and it's all gone. So,
But you've had a rough winter of it.
not as bad as last year, but it's definitely been rough. That's for sure. Last year was worse. But yes.
All right. So we had you on before and mostly talked about football, but you referee both sports. I would say both like there's only two. I mean, like curling's not number one, but no a curling ref yet, but you do both.
So
and you do
are
full
the
seasons?
officials in curling, are they just like chiropractors for when the old guy throws out his back?
I
No,
think
they're
they
the
just have a measuring tape, right? And they
Actually, I think they're
okay.
just bartenders that give out hot cocoa.
Yeah, and so obviously I do referee basketball. A little bit of background on that. So I've been doing football significantly longer. When I say longer, by a couple seasons. Basketball is the sport I played, so I played that, and then I also coached it while I was officiating football. So I coached at a high school here, coached a bunch of teams, and did all of that. And I finally got to the point, I guess it was 8 years ago now, where I got tired of the coaching side of it, and I wanted to take and put the whistle on and move to the other side. So I decided to hang up the coaching whistle and took on the officiating whistle and transitioned into basketball, which has always been, I don't want to say it was my preferred sport growing up, my preferred sport to play. But I do consider myself a football official first. So I'm sure we'll talk more about that later on, but that's kind of how I ended up into basketball.
Well, remind me later, Chad, to ask you some questions. Saturday night, me and some friends watched the University of Arizona play UCLA. And needless to say, there were many, 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 many colorful adjectives headed towards the Pac-12 officials. That's all I'll say for right now, because as you know, oh no, it was Washington. I take that back. So we are thinking that the Pac-12 officials are a little upset that they only have two teams in the Pac-12. But we'll go later into that.
Well, NCAA basketball, the referees are not divided by conferences like we are in football. So in basketball, from a collegiate standpoint, it's regional. So those officials, depending on what state you were playing in, were honestly most likely from your state,
Washington.
Arizona.
No, we were in Washington.
Okay, so yeah, you're set up in regions. So, and then you can obviously get invited to go to a game in a different state, but usually because the weather across the United States during basketball season is worse, you're divided into regions across the United States instead of the conferences. So is the way that it works.
Well, would you be a referee though for a certain tier school, or would you referee up and down all sorts of it's not skill levels, right? What do they call them? Division 1,
Yeah,
Division
so
2.
you are, once you enter the collegiate ranks, you are given you're told what level you can officiate. So you can officiate junior college, Division 3, Division 2, or Division 1, and that's for boys and for girls. There's not a lot of crossover. So like if you are a men's college official, you are a men's college official. You don't referee the women's game. Now if you're and vice versa. Whereas at the high school level, you get a rank for your boys and for your girls, and then you work all games depending on where they need you within the state of Utah.
Why wouldn't you cross over men, women? Are they different rules?
So At the collegiate level, the rules are slightly different between the boys and the girls, and so that's the main reason why. And so, because there are slight rule differences. Now, in the NFHS, which is the high school division, the rules are the same. The rule book's the exact same, so they don't change it. And that's the same with FIBA. So, right, so like the Olympics and stuff like that, that's the same rule book. So you might see some crossover and blend over there, but within the collegiate level, yeah, once you decide that you want to be a women's basketball official, you stick to being a women's basketball official, and then you work your way up through the women's ranks or the men's, whatever division you. Really, it's whoever offers you a job first, right? So that's kind of what it comes down to. So they'll say, "All right, we're ready for you to have your opportunity as a women's basketball official." Okay, I'm going to be a women's basketball official, and then you kind of that's what you are.
As far as the uniforms are concerned. For the official uniforms for officiating, are the basketball and the football kind of the same, a little bit the same, a little bit different? Because obviously to us, you just look like the Hamburglar, but that's,
They are different across every division, sex, everything. So
wow.
In the state of Utah, for the boys and girls games, at the high school level, we wear 1-inch stripes, no collars, and that's it, right? Short sleeves, obviously. You're not allowed to wear undershirts that go past the sleeve or anything along those lines. And then you wear slacks with no belt loops. So you're not allowed to wear a belt when you're officiating.
So you get to wear bandmon.
Yeah, so I have these. I have a shirt stay is what I wear. So I wear shirt stay, and then you have a special inside belt that it's not quite Velcro, but it's a rubber material. When you put that on underneath, and then the inside of the pants, the band has a different material that causes the two rubbers to kind of stay together. And so that's the way that we keep our pants up and keep your shirt tucked in. So,
from an outsider point of view, that just seems so bizarre because like anybody watching could care less if, how wide the stripes are, or that there's not just like a uniformed, this is what basketball refs wear.
Well, basketball is significantly more. Like you'll get roasted. Like very beginning of the season, we were at one of our officials association meetings, and this was for high school. And they told us, they said, "Hey, we're going to allow you to wear white now on your shoes. You're allowed to wear white. They used to be all black. Now they said something along the lines of like, try to keep it like 20% white, something like that, because guys were complaining that they were having a hard time finding all black shoes." And very first week, one of the guys on my crew, they were all black sneakers, but the bottom part, the sole, was white. And the players were roasting him. The coaches were roasting him. 2 weeks later, I worked with him again. He was in all black shoes. So the uniform is kind of a little bit different. And then at the collegiate level, if you pay attention, the women's game, the officials wear black sleeves and white stripes. And then in the men's game, they're kind of the grayish color, and they're a little bit different. So, and then obviously the NBA uniform is significantly different than everybody else's. So.
Oh, that's interesting. I never really realized that. Now, something else that we'll be looking for. Now, one thing that was commented on in that game that we were watching is it seems, if you go back to my era, maybe a little bit of Dave's era, in both the collegiate and the professional ranks, the shorts were like 5-inch shorts, and then they became like gangster 9, 12, 14-inch shorts. It seems like they're starting to creep back into the shorter area. That's what we noticed, which to me is more basketball, but
yeah, as far as the players go, and that you're going to get that everywhere, right? So really the main thing that we have is that you have to have two different colors, obviously, within the teams, and then the undershirts. So if you are wearing white, so you're the home team, you are only allowed to wear a white undershirt. That's it. And then if you're the visiting team, so, let's take Washington, for example. They were the visiting team. They're most likely going to be in purple. So they have options. So they can either wear black undershirt, or they can wear the team color undershirt. So the predominant team color. So it would be purple. They're not allowed to wear white undershirts or anything along those lines. They only can wear one of those two. And but you can't mix them. So you can't have like half your team chooses to wear a black undershirt and half your team chooses to wear a purple undershirt. It's one or the other.
It seems like when we were watching that game that people are starting, our players are starting to go back to, the shorter shorts and just the jersey, the tank top, as we call it, rather than having an undershirt under it. Which, growing up, that's what we remember.
Yeah, it's definitely going back to that. You still see a lot of shooting sleeves, stuff like that. People think that it keeps them warm. But usually in basketball, you don't see a lot of braces or anything like that, like you'll see in other sports. It's a different type of demand on the body, and I think that's kind of the reason why. It's very limited in terms of what the jersey is. So,
well, that brings up one final question as far as from an official standpoint. Is football or basketball a more demanding physical sport to you? I would think it would be basketball because you're constantly moving.
So the best way that I can explain this, right? So in football, we do a play stops. We do a play stops. You have time in between the game. In basketball, you just keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And on average, depending on how, athletic the two teams are, I'm averaging anywhere from 5 to 8 miles in a basketball game.
Wow.
So, and that's run time. So, it's a lot. So I kind of, pointed that out. It's with the end of my basketball season, I worked roughly 82, 83 games, somewhere in that range.
Oh,
and if you average that about 6 or 7 miles, a game, that's a lot of miles. That's a lot of miles.
It is.
So,
and we just want to remind everybody that to ask your questions, and we'll put those up as we get them.
Do you ever do more than one game a day then?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's very common, especially so Utah is kind of we have more rural areas, right? So we all kind of have to take our turns and do the rural games. And so usually when you go out and do a rural game, depending on how far you have to travel, you'll end up with anywhere from 2 to 3 games.
Jeez. That's exhausting.
Yeah.
Well, I had a couple questions before we get into kind of your personal experience. One is we saw a show recently about an airless basketball, 3D printed basketball. What do you think about that?
So we've seen the basketball evolution. We've seen it go around a lot. There was a time where they tried to put the pump inside of the basketball. So you push down and then twist, and then the pump would pop up and you could pump your ball up like that. Those caused dead spots. So if you bounced it just right, then the needle would kind of shoot out. We already tried an airless basketball at one point, and they were too heavy. So players complained about those. And this new one, I didn't realize it was 3D printed, but I've seen pictures of them. I didn't watch the special or anything like that, but I don't think it'll take off. I mean, the lower levels, and when I'm talking lower levels, I'm talking NCAA and lower, they've barely just accepted the synthetic leather ball. But they're all Wilson. Wilson makes the best synthetic leather ball. The NBA is still a Spalding leather ball. They're not willing to make that switch yet. And I have a hard time, seeing them switch to something different.
Well, so to me, it seems like a 3D printed basketball is nothing more than a wiffle ball without holes in it.
Well, no, that's the weird thing is you can see through it almost. Mm-hmm. And it's the same weight as a normal basketball and bounces exactly the same. Okay. But they said that the feel was kind of different. I mean, I'm assuming that's why they wouldn't, if they're used to leather, you wouldn't want to switch to synthetic because it's going to have a different feel. Yeah.
Well, what would be fun? Talking about basketballs, wouldn't it be neat to take that little ball that we all had as a kid called a Super Ball, make that basketball size, and let them play? That would be interesting.
Could you imagine getting hit in the chest with that thing? Like 20 pounds. Boom.
What do you say, Dave? Shall we take a question?
Yeah, P-Beat's got some obscure thing that maybe Chad will know about.
Okay. Thinking of Joseph Lindsay, ignoring Coach K's question of his charge call in his last Elite Eight game, is there a coach you revered that you've had to officiate?
So, Ed, admittedly, my basketball career is a lot younger than my football career. So I haven't worked a lot of really high level games beyond high school. I've worked a few here and there, but some things that I've really kind of enjoyed is past officials. So past players. So I've officiated Keith Van Horn. I've officiated Jeff Hornacek before he went to when he was done with the NBA and he came back and he was then coaching his son. I've officiated John Stockton. I've officiated an Antoine Carr, if you guys remember him, and Andre Miller. So I've officiated a bunch of guys like that. And
that's cool.
I also it is. And so I went down to an AAU tournament one time years ago down in Vegas. And I actually got to see LeBron James Jr. play and officiate him. So, and we all know now he's at USC, right? And everything like that. So, and LeBron James he wasn't coaching, but he was obviously there, watching his son play and stuff like that. So, I've officiated things like that. And that gets a little bit intimidating, right? Before the game starts, you see LeBron James, sitting over in the stands and stuff like that. And so he's obviously got his family with him and, a security guard sitting down next to him. And then you see his son out there who's warming up, getting ready to play. So I've experienced things like that. But yeah, I don't have those like big coaching stories like what PB's referring to, like I kind of did with football. So it's mainly ex-NBA players.
Did you have the incredible urge to look LeBron James and say, Michael was better? Anything like that, or
I would argue he knows. I would argue he knows. I mean,
so in other words, he's just throwing shade. Well,
yeah,
the statistics don't lie.
He's done a lot for the game. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, I grew up in the '80s, so for me, it's always '80s and '90s. Michael Jordan was the best to ever put on a basketball jersey, in my opinion, and then I would say Kobe Bryant's number 2. And then number 3, it's pretty hard to not say LeBron James.
Well, what's funny though, and we were talking about this, and the whole uniform question. Tigley's got a question here in a minute, but it seems like one basketball player that kind of sits in the shadows, and he's from my generation, so the late '70s, early '80s, was Larry Bird, and I'll tell you a quick story about Larry Bird. Larry Bird could predict what he was going to do when he was going to do it, because there was an interview one time where Shaq and Charles Barkley were in the same room. Now that in itself is a show by itself when those two are in the room, because I would not want to see either one of them running at me with a basketball, because that's like basically the Empire State Building coming at you. But they were talking about
Shaquille O'Neal, when he was holding a basketball, it looked like he was holding a ping pong ball. So.
Exactly. Well, he was telling this story, and Charles was nodding his head the whole time. And he said, one time they were playing the Celtics, and Bird came up and said, oh, by the way, at 2 minutes 40 in the fourth period, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And, of course, Shaq looked at him like he was crazy. And guess what? At 2:40, he did exactly what he said he was going to do. So I would argue that Bird doesn't quite get some of the press that he really deserves, because he was incredible.
When you start talking like top 5, or you start talking all-time best shooting guards or something along those lines, if Larry Bird is not in your conversation, you don't know basketball. That's my opinion. I mean, Larry Bird he's a legend for a reason. So, but is he better than the top 3? I don't know. But yeah.
And don't forget Spud Webb. He's a legend too.
Clearly, and Muggsy Bogues, right?
Muggsy Bogues.
And Greg Ostertag.
And Steve Kerr before. So here's one from Tigley. I've always wondered, do the players have to wear certain brands of shoes, like the
whole team?
The whole team needs to wear the same style.
Same style, same color.
No, that comes down to sponsorships, and we don't worry about it. So from an official standpoint, no, we don't care. But from a player standpoint, I mean, it's so at the high school level and some of the college level, you'll have a brand come in and they'll sponsor a whole team. And so if they're sponsoring the whole team, part of that rule, that they have in the sponsorship might be, in order to get this money from Nike, you all have to wear Nike. So that might be. But once you get to the NBA level, I mean, that's why you have individual shoe deals with individual players and stuff along those lines. And so they wear whatever they want.
Well, and you said it's hard for officials maybe to find good supportive black shoes. I think there's an opportunity there for the Nike Vargo line, right? For officials.
There you go. Yeah. Nike has always been very narrow on my feet for some reason. So I don't wear Nikes, but yeah, shoes, I stick to others.
Right.
My brand this year that I wore was a Cloud On. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with that brand here, but Cloud On, I think it's a Swiss brand. Those shoes are fantastic. This was like the first year where I didn't have my plantar fasciitis flare up. My knees actually feel pretty good at the end of the season. To finish the season, I feel like it's season ends into February, first part of March for me. It takes about 2 months before my body feels back to normal, and then I'm right back into football. So
that's
I'm in break
interesting
mode right now.
Because I know that we had talked about Hoka for years, and that's what I wear at work. So that makes me really, because I think they're the best for what I do.
A lot of guys wear Hokas.
But with what you're talking about, though, that sounds like a real interesting.
Yeah, I want to let PB know we're not posting any more of his comments until he tells us what he's drinking. That's always been standard for PB to come in, and he hasn't done that yet.
Yeah. Okay, well, while you're waiting for that, okay, I've got to ask you a question. Why is it that certain teams, and I won't mention any names, but the initials are Stanford and Washington, their courts with the painting on the courts?
Oh gosh,
that's got to drive an official nuts. Yeah. Is that true? Because you don't see a lot of that out there, especially Stanford's court.
I feel like Oregon's is pretty bad too. I feel like that would be like when you officiate at Boise State, right, for football. It's weird. I feel like in those stadiums and stuff like that, when you get out there, because we've got some schools here with some crazy courts and designs and stuff on them. When you're on the court, it doesn't impact me. But when I show up to the stadium or something along those lines, and I am looking from an aerial shot, or from up in the stands, I can't even understand how it would be to watch a game, as a fan.
Yeah.
But once you're down eye level, it's not as bad. Yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible. I don't know why they do it.
Speaking of courts, are most of the courts still wooden, or are most of them going to a synthetic surface?
Still wood. Yeah, we have a couple of schools here. They're kind of really low-level high schools in really small areas that are on tile, and they're horrible. I mean, those ones are they're really bad on your
linoleum or something.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, they're not good at all.
I was going to say once that gets wet, I mean, I know a laminated wood floor can still be slippery, but you would think that a tile floor would be like an ice skating rink.
Yeah, they're bad. They're bad.
Well, so okay, all right, it's good because I was going to go on to another question, but basketball. All right, whatever, buddy.
That's pretty good though when you think about it. Springfield Distillery official basketball bourbon. That's dedicated.
There you go.
Is that a thing? I don't know.
Is that a real bourbon?
Springfield Distillery, they do make whiskey, and Springfield is obviously a lot of history there.
Because knowing PB, he has a still out in his backyard, and he's making his own bourbon.
He could be. So Bill Lambeer's Flagrant Call, right, in the '91 Eastern Conference Finals. Yeah, we. As far as the call goes, I won't go into that. But to answer your actual question, no, the game has changed a lot in the level that I officiate, and this might be a good segue to talk about things. When it comes to officiating basketball, one of the things that's very difficult about this sport, from an official standpoint, is that there is no option within the rule book, within bounds, to be like, to blow your whistle and just say like, you know what, never mind. And I changed my mind. I don't like that. You don't have that choice. So you blow your whistle, you're committed to whatever that foul is. Now, when it comes down to, flagrant fouls, intentional fouls, and the differences between the two of those, the rule book pretty much is the rule book. And so there's not a lot of leeway like there is within the NBA rule book. So in the NBA rule book, essentially, as far as the officials are concerned, is when they have those types of flagrant fouls, all that it's determined is an ejection or no ejection. Anything that happens afterwards, and as far as disciplinary action, is all done by the league. So it's a totally different thing, and that's because these guys are making millions of dollars. So it's a little bit of a difference in terms of where for me, if I'm going flagrant, in our situations, what we do is I'll call the foul, and so fist up means foul, open hand means violation. So fist up, that's a foul. So I have a foul. If I feel like that I need to elevate that foul. So whenever I'm going up foul, right, that's a common foul. If I feel like I need to elevate it, it's always a 2 official decision. It's never a 1 official decision. So usually what happens is that I'll approach the other official who technically in the area where the foul happened would be the secondary official, not the primary, because I'm the primary. I'm the one that called the foul. So I'd go up to the secondary official and I'd say, hey, what do you think about that foul? Do you think we need to elevate it? That official's job at that moment is to provide information, right? It could be, I agree, it looked intentional. I agree, it looked pretty egregious. I agree, it looked like this. Or it could be, I'm fine with a common foul. And then it's up to me to decide when I go to the table, am I going to report flagrant, intentional, or common foul? So those are the decisions that are made. But I don't have a choice to say, I'm not calling a foul.
Now, can you do that in football? In football, can you do that? Can you say, oh, mistake?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we wave flags off all the time. Anytime you see the officials turn around and say there was no foul on the play, or we've determined that there was no holding on the play, or something like that, they wave the flag over their head. There's none of that in basketball. There's absolutely none of that. That
brings up 2 questions. One, obviously in basketball there are only 2 officials for the game, correct? You and one other.
3.
Okay. Well, that could answer the question, because during that game we were watching against Washington, both officials walked up to the table and there was another official sitting behind the table. What is that? Because I had never seen that.
So the rule book states, so technically in order for a basketball game to go, you have to have 4 individuals wearing stripes. So you have the 3 calling officials, and then you have the official scorekeeper. The official scorekeeper is provided by the home team. And they're responsible for keeping track of fouls, keeping track of the score, keeping track of when timeouts are called, keeping track of how many timeouts have been called, so on and so forth.
So they're an official.
Their job.
They are an official, though.
They are an official, but they are not assigned from the Officials Association. They are assigned by the university or the school. But they are required to still wear a striped shirt.
Okay.
So then I'm curious then, because in football you talked about like the officials watch different areas of the field, right? Because there's a lot of stuff going on at the same time. But in basketball, if you have to confer, that means at least 2 people are always watching where the ball is. Is that pretty much where the focus is all the time?
You officiate the defense, not the offense. And what I mean by that is that you are officiating the defensive players whatever end of the court you are on. So the lead official is the official who's underneath the basket. Whatever side he's on, the official directly behind, along his line, who is now behind the 3-point line, he's the trail official. Opposite trail is the center, and the center aligns themselves with the free throw line. And so if you can kind of like imagine where the 3 officials would be standing. So when you're lead, you are watching the key or the paint or however you want to refer to that, right? People call it different things. So you're officiating, that is your primary area. It doesn't stretch out to the 3-point line. It doesn't stretch out beyond the free throw line. You're just kind of officiating that general area. So I'm watching to make sure that when my defender slides over, is he legal? Is he in legal position to, or is he going to, to get charged, trying to get a charge? Or did he, put his hand straight up, but did he come down, type of a thing? Did he hit person? Did he, or was he displaced? Did he get in, held his position legally? Offensive player hit him, caused him to be displaced. Now we have an offensive foul. So we officiate the defense. And so the idea is that on any drive play to the basket, a drive is usually going to start out around outside of the league. So that's why I'm saying I'm officiating the defense. So once one of those outside officials realizes that the defender that they're watching, the person with the ball has gotten past them, they then now are watching them go to the hoop to make sure there's no other player that reaches a hand in, swipes across the body, or anything along those lines. And so he's then the secondary official, if that makes sense.
That's really interesting. Now, making the comparison between football and basketball from an official standpoint, the one thing that I've noticed is, like football players, if they're trying to draw a penalty, it usually happens around this line of scrimmage. A stuttered count that causes the defense to come across, or the defense stunting the offense to make him move and get an offsides. And very rarely do you see, like in basketball, where you will actually have players, and tell me if I'm wrong, you have players that actually try to draw in the foul. Is that fair? Is that a fair statement to say?
Yeah, it's a big deal, right? Basketball is officiated by how legal you are. So, you have to be legal. So, and this is the thing, right? So a defender can move left to right and backwards. A defender cannot move forwards into a player. So anytime that a defender can get into a position legally, moving left, right, or backwards, and contact happens, they want an offensive foul, because basketball is all about possessions. So an offensive foul means that they didn't get a shot off and we're going the other direction, and now they're the new offensive team. So it's all about getting into proper positioning. So that's why that play is so hard to officiate, because you might believe as a player or as a coach that your defender got there and he's there, but he might have gotten there late. So maybe the offense got into that position first. So they, that area of the court is their area of the court. And so that's really kind of what it comes down to. And the other thing is you might have jumped straight up, but your lower body came through. You didn't control your legs. The foul was on the body. You jumped into the player. Yeah, your arms were straight up, so you didn't foul him up top. You fouled him with your body. And so those are things that you always have to be prepared to explain to players and to explain to coaches.
Well, it also seems that in that situation, it really brings up the fact that how much defensive theatrics there are. Because we've all seen it, where all of a sudden the guy goes down on the ground and it was basically not even a touch, and he slides halfway to the key.
It's literally in the rule book now. It's called flopping, right? I mean, we've been using that term forever, but yeah, it's flopping. So if we have a defender that ends up on the ground, and we believe that he ended up on the ground under his own volition, we will do this signal during the game, hand straight up and then out. And the reason is because what we're doing is we're telling everybody in the stands, we're telling that player, and we're telling the coaches that we saw him go to the ground, but we believe that he did it on his own, and he flopped.
So it's the diva call.
Pretty much.
Wow.
I'm curious. In the last show, you talked quite a bit about the flack you would get from the players and the coaches and all that stuff. How is that different in basketball? Because everybody's so much closer and it's in an enclosed space. I would think you can audibly hear so much more going on behind you during the games as well. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Basketball is significantly worse dealing with the coaches and dealing with the fans. I mean, you watch any game on TV, the fans are literally part of the game. Row one is part of the game. So yeah, we hear everything. And plus it's like you make a big call, the very next time down the court, all of a sudden I'm standing next to the coach officiating the game, and he's standing behind me, asking questions. He's like, no, asking questions. I put that lightly. He might be yelling, he might be screaming, he might be, Chad, what the hell did you see? And it's like, Coach, your player wasn't legal, or he hit him low. It was a body foul. It wasn't a hitting foul, and that's the thing, right? Especially if there's free throws, the calling official always ends up table side. wherever you called the foul, because we rotate amongst the three of us. So if I call the foul underneath the basket, I now have to move over to the table to report the foul. And while the free throws are happening, guess what the coach is going to want to do?
Oh,
He's
sure.
going to want to walk down the court to where he can, call me over, and start asking me questions.
Now, do you have the same power, for lack of a better term, to eject a coach, just like you were talking about during our last one in football?
Absolutely. Right. So, in basketball, you get, at any time we can eject a player or a coach for, if we believe that they are becoming a disservice to the game, so to speak. So at any time, boom, we can kick them out. But in terms of like other things, we have our tools, as we call them. The first one is the official's warning. So if it's very early in the game, and I've got a coach, you can just tell that he's just going to be arguing every single play. We will strategically look for a time during the play where we can stop the game. We're very loud. We turn to the table and we say, official warning, white coach or blue coach or whatever color, their team is wearing. And we put the official warning in the book. And that is usually, it's big, it's theatrical, and it's a warning to the coach of like, hey, you're getting pretty close to crossing that line, because once he gets his first technical, he has to stay seated for the rest of the game. He's not allowed to stand up and coach. He has to coach by sitting down. And so they don't want to lose. We call it losing their coach's box. They don't want to lose their coach's box because, one, if they get the second one, they're now kicked out. And depending on what level you're officiating at, that comes with fines. But two, it's significantly harder. And I know this as a coach who got many technicals. It's very difficult to to coach sitting down.
Well, actually, PB brought up a good point. That, we kind of illustrated the point. We're pretty much sitting behind you on the boards.
You actually are. Look at that.
So let me. The other thing, we had talked personally too about some of these situations that you had been involved in with, and are probably still in some litigation with some of the football things that have happened to you. But what concerns me is, in a football game, you usually have a fence, you have the track, then you have the bench, then you have the football field. Where in this, you're 5-6 feet away from very, very pissed off people if you make a call that they don't like. Is that something that is taken for granted by the security that's provided to you guys by the colleges and the high schools?
No, from a college standpoint, anytime that you're in one of those gyms, they staff people, that are down, along the roads to kind of keep an eye on things. And they'll get rid of a fan real quick. And the high school level has gotten really good about that too. And all it takes is, if we feel like a fan is crossing the line, all it takes is for us to go to the table, because an administrator has to be sitting there, and we'll tell the administrator, we'll say, hey, you see that fan over there? He needs to go. And they don't even ask questions. They're like, all right. They go from the stands.
In the football one, I know you mentioned many times is you're having to explain the rules to the coaches, because one, the rules between high school and college and pros are different, but also it seems like football, they're always tweaking the rules from year to year. Is that the same in basketball? It seems like it's a little bit more stable, right?
For the most part, yes. We introduced a new rule this year to where that, and it doesn't really have a name. It's a violation. But we noticed that over the course of as the game has evolved over the years, we've noticed that teams have been strategic in terms of purposely running an offensive player out of bounds to kind of go around the defense and then come back onto the court and trying to get into a more advantageous spot. So now whenever we see that happening, we stick our hand straight out in an open fist. And what we're doing is we're telling our partners that I have a player that has left the court. And if he is the very next player to touch the ball, it's a violation. And so that was a new rule that we introduced this year. And that, I think it's a great rule, because, it's like we don't really want one. It's not safe, right? Because that's where spills happen. That's where things along those lines. You've got fans sitting in the background. You've got cameramen down there. It's not safe. Players are going to get hurt. And two, it really was causing, kind of a disservice to the game. Players purposely going out of bounds and then trying to come back in bounds.
Yeah.
So the rules do change, not as often though.
This is an interesting question, kind of leading a little bit to basketball, or football rather. But PB says, someone told me in the NFL approximately 153 plays a game and game officials are 98.9% accurate. Have you heard that statistic?
Oh yeah, I mean, and that's 153 plays in a football game is low. I think the average for my football games this year now, granted, college is significantly faster game than NFL in terms of snaps. They're snapping the ball quicker. The players are faster in the NFL, but most of my games are up around 180 to 190 plays. And yeah, we've got to be that accurate, And basketball, you got to be just as accurate. And the reason is because if you aren't, you lose your job. And this is something I kind of wanted to talk about in terms of basketball, and it's a good segue in terms of accuracy. Basketball, from an official standpoint, is extremely political, and I'll explain why. In football, you're assigned a position, and so when you go out to work that game, the crew you're working with, nobody is trying to take your job. Nobody. They want to be the best at their position. Well, nobody else is working their position that day. In basketball, the three of us are assigned, and we're on a team. We got to be on the same page. But at the end of the day, those other two officials, I don't know if they're ranked higher than me, if they're ranked lower than me, or anything along those lines. I'm technically competing against them for better game assignments, for playoff games and stuff along those lines, because we don't stay with crews throughout the season. At any level, your crews change. So it's like you're always competing against the people that you're working with. And the only way that you know that somebody is ranked higher than you is whoever they designate the R. So we have in the assignments, they assign R, U1, and U2. And the R, the only thing that he has is he throws the ball up at tip-off. That's it.
Really?
That's the only thing he does different than the other two officials. He throws the ball up in the air. And also that if we ever got into a situation to where that the three officials were arguing about a rule interpretation during the game and we couldn't come to an agreement, he would be the tiebreaker, whoever the R is. So, but at the end of the day, the guys that you're going out on the court and you're working with, you're competing against them too for rankings. So
that's different than football, where you have the white hat who is the referee. He is basically the boss out on the field. Right?
Yeah, he's the boss of the crew, right? And you work with him all year and stuff.
So is that why you sometimes? So is that why sometimes you see, because in football you never really see referees or officials getting animated to the point where it's like acting, but in basketball sometimes you will see an official that seems like he's being very, very animated. Is that part of it? Is that he's just trying to make himself look better?
Basketball, you have the ability to kind of make the game your own, right? So like in football, it's all about, the way you are and how you're positioning yourself. It's very kind of like military type. Whereas in basketball, you kind of get your own flair. Everybody like calls an offensive foul a different way. Everybody, it's like if you've got a big thing up top, you'll kind of, one of the things like I do, if I got to travel that's outside of the 3-point line, I will kind of go, hand up, it's a violation. I'll kind of take 2 steps, go travel, and then keep running down the court. So everybody kind of introduces their own flair to the game, which is kind of a little bit, is interesting for sure.
Interesting.
Well, wait, one of the questions I had before we came into this, you just brought it up, is traveling. So, because you see videos, especially in the pros, like where you see them count like 3 or 4 steps before they make their shot or something like that. And it's kind of like certain players are given the leeway in all that. Is that somewhat forgiven also in all levels of basketball? And 2, is that just part of let the game go if it's not flagrant?
I can't talk to the way the NBA officiates traveling because they have included that gathering is part of the first step. So I can't even explain all of that. I've never sat in on NBA training, obviously, but from traveling for our perspective, the idea is that you need to establish a pivot foot. Now, the problem is that when you're driving and you're doing this, what, non-basketball officials, so players, coaches, and fans refer to as the Euro step, technically a pivot foot is not established, and so we are really trying to judge, was that first step as the ball was coming up from the ground, or has they already kind of had their hand underneath the ball, which stops it? So you're trying to judge where the ball is and how many steps are actually taken. So it's really traveling is actually one of the most difficult things to call in terms of violations. The other is block charge, but it's very, very difficult to call. The better the talent becomes. So, if you're going out and you're working, you're just starting out as an official and you're working AAU basketball and you've got a bunch of fourth graders out there, you're going to ask yourself, it's like, hey, look, if I sit here and call traveling all day, this game that's supposed to take 45 minutes is going to take 4 hours. I'm going to let some of this shit go. You start officiating a college game or you start officiating a high school game, you really have to start judging advantage, disadvantage. And we talked a lot about this. That's the way the rule book is written in terms of high school as well as NCAA. Advantage, disadvantage. So when is it becoming an advantage? If he, could have, started that step, and I don't know for 100% certain that the ball wasn't also on the way down or on the way back up, I'm probably going to let it go. Now, if I believe that, that step and he had the ball up, kind of palmed, and that extra step allowed him to, get an advantage on the defender, I'm going to come in and I'm going to call a travel.
Interesting. Here's an interesting question. Because I know they're talking, use of technology, especially in baseball, with being able to see strikes and balls right on the screen as they're pitched. But is there any technology being used in basketball or in the future that you see?
So we do have video replay. So video replay now, at least at the high school level, is strictly for where was the ball when time expired or stuff along those lines. You're not really reviewing or where was the ball on the court. It's not judging fouls, it's judging violations. And that's really important, right? So it's like if you see a referee, they stick their finger up and they twirl it, what they're saying is that I want to look at that, right? So it's like there was a shot, he signaled 3, but he wasn't 100% for certain. Maybe his toe was on the line. I'll run down the court and I'll go like this to the table. So that way they know that I want to see that play at the next stoppage. So the next time we stop, I'm going to go to the table. They're going to pull the play up on the monitor. I'm going to review it. And if it wasn't a 3, I'll change it to 2 points. So that's really what it comes down to. Right now, technology will allow us to overrule violations that are called. It will not make us call violations, and it will not make us call fouls. It can make us upgrade fouls. So if I saw a player get hit to the head, I'm going to always go to the video and I'm going to look at that and I'm going to make sure, was that intentional or was it incidental? And I'm going to try and make that judgment. And if I feel that it was, intentional, then I'm going to upgrade the foul from a common foul to an intentional foul.
That's interesting. Now, before we get into talking about the NIT, March Madness is here, starting next week. What have you ever, because I know that you coach, 2 questions. One, did you ever consider doing anything in baseball as far as umpire or any type of officiating there, number 1. Number 2, with all the differences in calls as far as hand gestures are concerned, have you ever had to catch yourself going, whoops, that's a football call as opposed to a basketball call? I've always wondered that.
No, I have not. Now, usually the first couple games after football season, getting into basketball season, really what it kind of comes down to is that you kind of got to get used to the whistle. Because in football, you're kind of whistle adverse. In basketball, man, you got to be on that thing quick, to stop the play, to stop the game, whatever you need to do. So to that sense, yeah, not really. Baseball, I would love to start doing high school baseball. I absolutely would love it. My wife, on the other hand, probably wouldn't.
Well, because
I'm away enough with the other 2 sports.
I was going to say it's because so many games and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, talking about the time, what about the prep of officiating basketball as opposed to football, because you mentioned watching game film and then afterwards,
Mhm.
but you'd think football, you've got a play that lasts a pretty short time and then a lot of space in between. But basketball, it's like all action. So you'd have to
Yeah.
review the whole game, right?
So usually what we do in terms of, I'll explain the way that I prepare for a game, right? Because I will get game assignments and I might be working 4 games a week. So that means I've got 8 teams that I need to prepare for, right? So I've got 8 teams that I got to prepare for. So what I tend to do is I have a very strategic system in to where that one, I always pull up and I look at stats and I try to pay attention to who's their top scorers, who's, stuff along those lines, write down their numbers. And then I'm also going to look at how many fouls do they get, because whoever has the most fouls, those are what we call our game records. Those are the guys who are going to go out there, and they're the ones that might ruin the game for you. But then I watch 15 minutes of each team film. And what I'm trying to identify is what kind of offensive plays do they run and what is their primary defense? Are they a zone? Are they man-to-man? Are they on offense? Are they going out and running like that typical motion play? Are they running, like a Phil Jackson, where you put the center up top? What kind of offense are they running? And the reason for that is because it's going to assist me when I get out into the game in terms of positioning. But I do not watch nearly as much film as I do for football.
Wow. That's interesting. So we've got one final question before we go into the NIT discussion. And this is basically, and this person, and they're going to put you on the spot. Are women players better sportsmen than men players?
Are women players better sports than men? Okay, so we're talking about like how are they? I would say it's equal. I'd say it's equal. To be honest with you, yeah. I mean, in the women, I've been in some of those games where they can get pretty vicious, and plus they got hair. I mean, I've had hair pulled, stuff along those lines, and also in the women's game, we inspect fingernails before we start. Make sure that nails aren't long and they can't have the fake nails or anything along those lines. So no, I'd say it's pretty equal, to be honest with you. So,
and one final football question, because so now, remember in the old days, everybody had their hair pretty much groomed under their helmet, but now you have guys that have got, hair out the back. And I think you mentioned this one time to me, and I'm not sure if it was in the last show, but that you can actually grab that hair to pull somebody down, right?
Yeah, it's part of the jersey in football. It's technically part of the jersey in basketball too. But you can't grab a player's jersey in basketball.
You can't tackle somebody, right?
Yeah, so we usually don't have that problem in terms of the hair.
Dave, I actually saw a YouTube
make
video recently that was a compilation of folks being tackled by pulling the dreadlocks and stuff like. It was awesome. Watching these big dudes just getting yanked down by their hair.
Yeah, every time that guy gets tackled by the hair, he jumps up and wants to know why you didn't call anything. It's like, buddy, put it in your shirt, man.
Well, so do you, as a professional referee, do you see at some point the NFL, the college, the high school, are they going to have to address that, you think? Or has it already been talked about?
As far as I'm concerned, it's already been addressed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you understand that if you have long hair, you might get tackled by it.
So in other words, it won't be changed until somebody gets yanked real hard from the back and they have a cervical injury. Then they'll probably look at it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so let's transition. We've got March Madness coming, and for those people that don't watch it, being an official, go ahead and explain. You don't have to go into the complete detail of how it works, but kind of talk about what makes this so special in basketball, and also what it would be like to officiate it, number 2, and then number 3, your picks of who you think is going to go all the way.
So as far as the men go, I think I'm picking Houston. I think Houston has a really good shot this year to kind of play upset. I know that's a surprise. Duke will always be, in the conversation. So no complaints there. In terms of the women, I know everybody is all into Iowa right now, but I don't think they have enough supporting cast. I think Utah, if they get hot, the women, they stand a pretty good shot. But the reason why March Madness is so special is, one, if you are going to get a vasectomy, you schedule your vasectomy for round 1 during round 1. And the reason why is because then you're sitting at home on the couch and you have nothing but basketball on your TV. It's on all the time. It's everywhere. And the games are just so exciting. I mean, every game is a live or die. And basketball is so fast paced. I mean, it's in terms of American sports, it is the one sport where that it is constant, right? I mean, that we watch a lot of. I mean, the other sports are like hockey, it rises to that level as well. But football, you got the breaks in between. Baseball, the game has gotten so slow. Now, granted, they've done better with making it faster. Don't get me wrong, but basketball is just so entertaining. It's just so entertaining, and it's just all you need. It's like you always want to see that upset. You always want to see a 16 ranked team knock off a number 1, and we've been seeing that more recently.
Well, I was just going to say, and granted, I'm biased, but the University of Arizona was ranked number 1 for a long time. Now we've dropped. Now we've come back up, and we're all saying we don't want to be higher than 6th, because when we do get higher, we get worse. And but it's anybody's ball game in the tournament. You could be ranked first the entire year and go out in the first round.
Oh yeah,
and that's what I like.
I think that's what's so exciting about it. And I've had the opportunity. I know I sent you some pictures. I've had the opportunity to work some games that are very, I hold very dear to my heart because of how exciting they were to work. And you would think it would be like, the time that you worked the state championship game, or the time that you worked this region championship game, or, you worked the Division III first round game. All those things. But the ones that I always hold near and dear to my heart is when I worked the national championship game for the deaf and blind. So there is a deaf and blind league. Now, they're not all blind, but they're grouped together in their league, but they're deaf. And we have a really big school here that is for the deaf and blind, and they have a professional league. Like I'm talking, they are professional players, that are deaf, and they played their championship tournaments were housed here in Utah, and they set up a bracket very similar to college. And I was invited to go officiate the national championship game. And that is one that I just hold near and dear to my heart. And I've have also officiated Special Olympic gold medal games. And those are amazing. Those are the types of games that I hold near and dear to my heart in terms of basketball. Because in those types of situations, you get to see people play at that high of a level, and, they're good and they're just fun. They're just fun. And those are ones, that are great. And I have the best story is I'm working a high school game, and I was asked to go to the deaf and blind school. So they also play high school. And so they play against other high schools in their same division. So it's usually lower division, like 1A or 2A. And when you show up to the school, the athletic director, he can't hear. He has a cochlear ear implant, so he can hear a little bit, but he reads lips. And one of the things he always makes a point to come in and do is he comes in and he talks to you and he tells you how to signal in sign language the colors of the team. And so he tells me, the visiting team, they're wearing black today, he's saying, and he's talking to us. And he says, so just so you know, when you go to the table, because, right, they assign the official scorekeeper. Well, the official scorekeeper can't hear. So the official scorekeeper, needs to know sign language. They can read numbers when I'm holding up numbers, 22 or 23, whatever, but they need to know the rest. And so they need to know what color. So he says, this is how you do black. You take 2 fingers and you put it above your eyebrow and you swipe to the side, right? And so that's black in sign language. And I'm like, okay, great. Thank you. So I go out there and we're officiating the game, and we're in the first quarter, and we've had a couple fouls on the black team. And I keep going up and I'm going like this, foul and black, foul and black, foul and black. And so we have a timeout in the first quarter, and the athletic director comes walking out onto the court. And I'm like, this is kind of weird. So, I walked up to him and I'm like, yeah, what's up? And he goes, it's 2 fingers. And I go, what do you mean? And he goes, black, 2 fingers, across the eyebrow, 2 fingers. And I go, what was I saying? And he goes, this is derogatory. This is essentially the N word. And so I was like, what? And he goes, yeah. And he points to their head coach for
Oh no!
African American. So I'm sitting here the whole first quarter doing this.
Oh.
Thankfully it was all innocent.
Yes.
I didn't
Right,
offend anyone.
right.
I felt so bad. I was like, holy crap. But yeah, so those are just little things you have to add into your game in situations like that. You don't realize it, but that's the way that they introduce it. And repping those games is so rewarding because the players in the moment are giving 100%, but they can't hear the whistle. They can't hear the whistle.
I was going to ask, what do you do to call a foul?
So they set up lights, strobe lights around the gym, and there is a person who sits at the table that can hear. So whenever you blow the whistle, they push the button and the lights start flashing. So that way the team realizes, oh, okay, the whistle was blown. So that's the way that it works. But it's awesome, And then if you've ever seen the national anthem performed by in sign language, that's one of the most beautiful things ever because it turns into a performance, and kind of like a dance performance type thing, and it's absolutely amazing to watch.
That's cool.
So
how did you get selected for that?
So I have a FIBA rank, so that's for the international terms of basketball, and that's what they work under. And that year, I was just having a really good year. I was healthy, I was in good shape, I was getting really good games, and they had seen a couple of my games, and I got the phone call and was invited to come work their national championship game. So I worked a couple of games leading up to it, but then I was selected and chosen to work the national championship, and it was
That's really cool.
It's one of the highlights of my career, and it's like nobody else watched it, right? I mean, it was streamed, and you can go find it on TV, find it on YouTube and stuff like that. But I mean, it's not getting the attention that the Final Four is going to get or the Elite Eight games. But to me, that's like one of the highlights of my career, just because of how much fun I had doing it.
Now, one other question, Chad. If you had a choice between football or basketball to go to the big show, in other words, to be doing this full time as a career, which would it be?
Football.
I figured that.
Football. I love basketball, but I played it, and I don't want to try and like toot my own horn, but my college career was cut short so quickly due to an injury that anytime, every year, every season, I feel like I have to kind of go back through those emotions of my career getting cut short. But I love the game. I absolutely love it. And that's why I get back to it. That's why I coach it. But my career-ending injury that had happened before I was even able to play in an actual physical college game and ruin my career. That part of my life, it really kind of put me in a slump. And I struggled with that for the longest time. And it took me a while to get back into the game. And that's when I got offered to coach, and I kind of got back into it. And coaching was fun. I enjoyed it. We won a lot, never won a state championship or anything like that. But, I loved it, and so it felt good to get back into the game.
Now, you've got 3 kids. One's a little too young yet to be into anything. The other ones show any interest in any sports yet or start playing anything?
So my son, because they play they go to Catholic school, and so there is a Catholic league here in the state of Utah, and they do it by ages. And so I coach at his school. I coach his division. So the 3rd through 5th graders, and he's in 4th grade. And actually, his team, we did win the championship this year. So that was pretty exciting, to kind of be able to do that with my son. My daughter loves to go to the University of Utah girls games, loves it. And we have one of the players. Her name is Elisa Pilley, and she's from Alaska. So she's a native Alaskan. So she's technically of the Eskimo tribe, one of the Eskimo tribes up there. And she's right up there. I mean, she's our, Iowa player, so to speak. She's fantastic. She's a lot of fun to watch, Elisa Pilley. And if you looked up some of her plays, you'd see it. And they do so much for the girls, because I remember the first time I was getting ready to take my daughter to one of the games, she says, girls don't play basketball. And I'm like, I officiate girls basketball all the time. You're coming with me. And, in the girls game, it's different than the boys game. They're trying to get more fans. They're trying to get more people there. So they invite kids down on the court during warm-ups. So my daughter goes down and she gets to high-five them all. The referees come up and are high-fiving the kids. And my daughter's like, hey, my dad's a referee too, and stuff like that, and talking to the officials and talking to the players. And then when the game's over, they give them all posters of all the players, and they get to go down on the court and they get to interact with them. And so they make it so much fun. And so now my daughter is like all into basketball. She's wearing the youth shirt. She's running around. She pretends she's playing basketball in the house, and now she wants to play. So it's like,
that's cool.
She'll be able to play in the girls division in a couple of years at her school too. So it's great to see it. It's good to get, kids around and get them involved, and, show to them that, especially, at the AAU level, your kid, at the AAU level, you can officiate basketball year round. And I know I'm kind of jumping a little bit, but you can officiate basketball year round because of these AAU tournaments. But those are the worst to officiate. And it's because the parents believe that by paying all this money to have your kid play AAU basketball, they think that the NBA scouts are sitting in the stands. Well, I hate to break it to you. Nobody is going out and willfully watching fifth grade basketball, except for parents and grandparents. All right. They're not here. Coach K is not sitting out there trying to find the next star player to go to Duke for a year. It's not happening. So, so it's like those types of things are hard. I hate officiating.
So that brings up the question of, because we had talked in the last show about parents, in football and stuff like that. Do you find the same type of thing in those AAU tournaments?
Oh yeah, it's worse. It's worse. The last AAU game I worked, I was working a game, and we were in a convention center with 35 courts set up in the convention center.
Wow.
And so there was no seating, obviously. So parents were just standing on the out of bounds line and underneath the hoop. And I had this one parent who was just being an ass. And you have no security, you have no support, nothing like that. And we got to a timeout, and I told my partner, I said, I am done with this fan, and I've about had it. I said, I'm gonna walk off. He goes, I've had it too. I'm ready to walk off with you. So the next time down the court, we have a fast break, and I'm getting ready to run down to the other end. He grabs my jersey and holds it. And so I blow my whistle, stop the game, turn around. He lets go of it. And I'm taller than him. I'm bigger than him. And I literally just pulled my whistle off, handed it to him, and I said, you're now the official. And my partner and I walked out and left.
Wow.
And like, screw this, man. So, yeah, I mean, youth sports, you got to find good leagues. You got to find good leagues and make sure that it's actually fun for your kids. Because if your kids are not actually enjoying it, they're never going to want to play anyways. They're not going to want to play. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter how good you think that they might be or how much coaching they could actually get. If you put them in those bad environments, they're going to learn to hate the game. And it's the same in basketball as it is in football. When I officiated the youths, is that you would overhear the players say things like, I wish my mom would just shut up. I wish my dad would stop yelling. I wish my dad would do this. And it's like, they just want you to cheer for them. They don't want you to, point out all the things that they're doing wrong. They don't want you to try to coach them while their coach is also coaching them. And it's just so sad to see what's happening to youth sports across the country. Did you hear about it everywhere?
Yeah, it's sad
coming off of it.
Well, no, it's sad that parents even that young are living their lives through their children.
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. I don't need to live my championship game or my championship loss that I had as a sophomore in high school through my son. Right. I don't need to relive it through him. He wasn't there. He doesn't know that in my sophomore year we lost in the state championship game. We went and won it my junior year, but I'm not going to live vicariously through him. Set expectations that are unrealistic for him.
Right. Yeah. Well, before we go, is there any other questions from the barflies for Chad while he's here? And Dave, do you have any other questions?
No, I was just gonna say, he refs basketball. We did that. Football, he did that. I'm gonna come back to. He's got to learn curling so we can bring him back again. Right?
I'll come back and talk with you guys anytime whatsoever. And I thought we were showing pictures. There were no pictures, man.
We had some technical difficulties.
Oh, I was waiting for you to. I was saving it. I wasn't going to say it until you put the picture up. But the other highlight from my career, I'll keep it brief. People don't realize this, but everybody's heard of the Harlem Globetrotters, right? Everybody's heard of them. So the Harlem Globetrotters, when they're doing that actual event, and they're in the big arenas, right? They're like at the Staples Center. They're at the U of A. They're at where the Phoenix Suns play. They're at the Delta Center where the Jazz play. Wherever they're at, that's where they're at. But when they travel and they come into your state, they pick what I think is super cool. They pick kind of like a low rundown, area. Every city has them. Every city has those areas, which it's like it's underprivileged and stuff along those lines. And they put on different jerseys, not the Globetrotter jerseys, but they put on the Wizard jerseys, and they call themselves the Harlem Wizards.
Right.
And they go out and they play the high school basketball team.
Oh, that's cool.
In front of the fans. And I've officiated those a couple times. And so some of the pictures that I sent you was me officiating the Harlem Globetrotters. And so, and then, so that's fun. They ask you to kind of show up early, and they kind of, walk through some things, and, they're going to say, I put officiate, that's very lightly. You're not really officiating those games. It's a show, but, they kind of, they involve you in it. And it's fun to make it a little bit more lighthearted, especially because that team that they're playing, I just officiated them in a serious game like a week ago or something along those lines. And now you're getting to do this with them. And it makes it more fun. So those types of opportunities, I've had more of those, fun opportunities in basketball than I've had in football. Football is so serious because it's like, it's a very physical, demanding, aggressive game. And in basketball, you have the ability to kind of like tone it back. You can go out there and, the Special Olympics has basketball. Special Olympics doesn't have football, stuff like that. So when you are officiating, the gold medal game of the Special Olympics, that's kind of cool, and the point guard, has Down syndrome, and he goes out there and knocks down 40 points. It's like, it's cool as hell, man. I mean,
Sure.
That's neat. So just things I enjoy. And I'm not Canadian. I don't know where that came from. Saw that.
Well, that's cool. Well, and you and I have talked about it, and I hope that at some point, it would be really cool to see you take that dream that you have and make it a complete reality.
It's hard. It's really hard to get, to jump. Once you kind of get to any level in officiating, once you get to that Division III and or Division II, right? So I'm in Division II in football. I've worked a couple of Division III games in basketball. To make that leap, it's extremely difficult, and there's just not a lot of jobs. I mean, so I hope it happens, and I'm prepared, and I prepare myself, for it to happen. But if it doesn't, already, and my career is still young in terms of officiating, already I've got enough stories to be excited about, what I've done.
Sure. Well, Chad, like I said, on behalf of the Barflies, on behalf of myself and Dave, thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to spend time talking about it, because I think it educated some people as well as far as different things about basketball. Dave, you'd like to add anything?
No, beautiful show. Yeah, thank you so much, Chad. It makes it like we've always said, the Barflies make the show, but then the guests make it much more special when we've got them on. So appreciate it.
And we just like to remind everybody, tell your friends, subscribe to us at Drinks and Dave's. And also starting next week, we will be at 6 p.m. Pacific / Mountain Standard Time. So I actually get
daylight time. We're going to daylight time, baby.
You guys are. We're not. We're staying the same. Dave's jumping to. He's jumping to join us in the stagecoach in Arizona, and then you're moving later towards midnight. So, but I want to thank everybody, and we'll see you again next week for more fun here on Drinks and Dave. Say goodnight, Dave.
Night, Dave.
Take care, everybody.